Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Playground to Premiership, episode 4 with Mick Halsall. Welcome, Mick.
Hello, Wayne.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Look, I've obviously spoke very highly of you on social. Our paths crossed, I think, about 24 years ago now when we was at Walsall. Lots of people who are invested in football and locally will know of you. We'll go all the way back to your playing career, Mick, but probably most prominently in terms of the coaching roles you've had and youth player development. And as you can see here today, we're here at ACE, and obviously our passion and focus is youth development. So it's brilliant to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully, I'm good enough to be on it. So fingers crossed.
Mick, well, you know what? I was going to see Pete, who he's good enough from Circle Media to do it. Obviously, we're in the Walsall X group chat.
Yeah.
Players said, never seen you look so well, Mick. You're looking great. They also, what was really nice, and it wasn't the amount of people that said, great coach, Mick, top lad, went onto social media. You had so much of a good outpouring, genuinely. And I know you're not probably a social media guy, are you?
No.
So your credentials do speak for themselves. I'll say that you don't need to. So I think you'll add huge value. I've said to lots of people that you've been a bit of a mentor. I've always been able to have you here over these years of running ACE. So hopefully we can have some good debate, bring some questions to life that will hopefully help coaches, parents, and in turn from the coaches and the parents with the young ones, the players. No, you are more than good enough, and thank you for coming. So for those who don't know, Mick Halsall, take it all the way back. Young started his career at Liverpool, which we're going to speak about. Went on to Blues, the posh Pele, somebody called you.
I'm not too sure.
Very highly regarded at Peterborough. And obviously into your coaching days, I obviously met you at Walsall. I think you started at Peterborough, and you've coached for clubs like Wolves, Walsall, Notts County, Cambridge, and now you're head of coaching, pro licensed coach at West Brom, and you received an award from the Premier League for your services to youth development.
Yes.
So you are more than credible for coming on. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you.
So take it all the way back. And it is going back a bit. Because we always like to start with people's introduction. How did they get their love of football? How did yours start, Mick?
Yeah, first and foremost, it started, as we all know, in a Sunday League environment. The environment was a club called Earlham Rangers originally, and then Merton Villa, which my dad started with a lot of other gentlemen whose sons were looking to play football. Funny enough, Jamie Carragher came through at a very young age with my Uncle Peter, but I think Jamie left quite early, at maybe 10, so he was there for a while, but from around the same area where I grew up, which was Bootle, which is by the docks. But yeah, I came through that system, and then worked all the way through up until about 15, when I was picked up originally by Everton.
How young could you go? Just one?
15, schoolboys, 14, 15 at the time, Wayne. But I was fortunate to get picked up. I didn't go into Everton for one reason or another, but I was first scouted by a gentleman for Everton. And then a friend of my dad's who went to school with him was a scout for Liverpool, and he just phoned up one day and he said, I believe your son's been invited into Everton. Does he support Liverpool? And he said, it's Liverpool. So he said, would he come in here? And that was it, really. I had the opportunity to go in there, and the rest is history, really. I went in as a schoolboy, worked through the B team, the A team. It was predominantly 3 teams at that time that were under the first team environment, and that was the reserve side. So I went in at 15, 16, started playing in the B team, and then moved up to the A team. But I stayed on at school. I was a late developer. I know we'll maybe come on to that, but I was a July birthday. So I was quite small, but again, got the opportunity, went in, signed, and I eventually, I think it was about 8 months, and I got a pro.
So this also as well is in that hugely successful era of Liverpool. Is that the Shankly era?
Well, it was just after Shankly. It was after Shankly. It was around 77. So one of my first training session as a pre-season as an apprentice was 1977, so they just won the European Cup. So the environment I was going into, you know, as everyone knows from the history, they were phenomenal at the time, you know, and to go into that, being my team and working with the staff that I did, you know, work with or worked under was absolutely fantastic. And Kenny Dalglish had just joined, Kevin Keegan had just left. So, you know, Kenny Dalglish and the likes were at the heart of it, you know. So it was just a privilege to be around it. I always had a sense I was never going to be good enough for Liverpool, but, you know, I know we'll come on to talking about dads and all that, but my dad always believed that, you know, looking back on it, I was right, you know. They were way ahead of what I was. I was honest. I believe I was honest. I was aggressive. I could play, but I had a lot of quality players around me that helped me as well. So, yeah, it was fantastic upbringing, and I think a lot of the stuff that I hopefully have brought into my coaching career was embedded into me really from them.
And you said to me, like, with Liverpool, the calibre of people, was it Sheedy and Ronnie Williams, did they come through around your age group, or were they the ones sort of stopping you get through?
Yeah, well, they were brought in.
A couple of people who had illustrious careers, one for Everton, but obviously Ronnie Whelan for Liverpool.
Yeah, well, they were around the same age, but at that time it was just changing a little bit, Wayne, and to the extent of, like, Ronnie came in from Home Farm in Ireland, and Kevin came in from Hereford.
Right.
And they were bought into the club, and they were predominantly midfield players. That's where I played all my career. But to get into the reserve side, and it's something I talk to about young players now, I played in and out as a left back or a centre mid for the reserves. And I'd play anywhere just to get a game because that's what I needed to do. So that was just me being able to cope with the demands of the game and being able to get games under my belt.
That's one of the questions, dual positions, because I think, not for me to reminisce, I hopefully haven't said it on the podcast before, but I speak to the children. I want to speak to you about dual position as we go forward. But sometimes, like you said, I said to my lad and another lad the other day, I remember when Gerrard made his debut for Liverpool, it was a right back.
Yeah.
He was always a centre mid, but he just wanted to get in.
Absolutely.
And I remember trying to get in at Walsall at a point where Neil Poynton, who played for Everton, didn't he, said, try and play at left back. And I was just adamant I was a centre mid. But if you're a good player, you have that versatility.
Yeah.
And obviously have that sort of strength of character to say, look, just get me playing.
Yes.
So you left there to Blues?
Yes, left there to Blues. And again, it was just an opportunity that arose. Howie Gale, who's a good friend of mine, put my name forward towards the people at Birmingham at the time. Ron Saunders was manager, and they came to watch me in a reserve game on a Monday night against Wolves. Subsequently, they made an offer, and I moved to Blues and made my debut 17th of March 1983 against West Brom.
I was 5, yeah. But tell you, it took resilience with young players. Tell us about your first training session at Blues. Talk me through that.
Yeah, well, it was, again, it was just one of those situations. We played on the Monday. I travelled down on the Wednesday, signed, made my first training session. And Pat Vandenau, who everyone knows, gave me a crack across the eye. And the picture wasn't, well, as you can see, I'm a handsome old man, aren't I? And my nose had already gone anyway. But yeah, the first picture that I ever had taken in a blue shirt was the yellow kit. And I had a black eye and my teeth just there starting to discolour after getting the kick in my mouth a few years earlier.
But resilience again for young lads.
Yeah.
Before I forget, because it did get called the posh Pele.
Yes.
Someone here, their granddad, I'm not saying randomly, because we're in the Midlands, is a Peterborough fan.
Yeah.
He was hugely excited and talked to me about you playing there. But you had some good part of your career at Peterborough?
Yeah, again, you know, you talk about resilience, Tomo, and again, if I can just go back to the Liverpool days and that, you know, I went... I didn't really know where I was going, so I'd never moved out of Liverpool. I'd never lived outside of Liverpool. So going into Birmingham was an eye-opener because I think it was the first time I ever realised the standard of players outside of Liverpool Football Club, you know, and that was an awakening for me. And then gradually throughout the years, and opportunities really, going to Blues, then going to Carlisle, who were in the old second division then, so it's the Championship now.
Yeah.
I went to Carlisle with Bob Stokoe and Bob Robinson, who a lot of the older people who may watch this will know. Played with some terrific players there. Went to Grimsby for about 13 weeks. Got relegated. And then went to Peterborough, so it was opportunity. And again, that was through a man called Noel Cantwell, who was a legend at Manchester United. And again, people will refer to him again for being a part of the Man United. I think they won the cup in 1964. So it was just an opportunity. But again, having to stick in it, you know, it was tough originally at Peterborough for me. And, you know, there was times when I was looking to leave. I just had a young family. I just had a daughter and then a young boy, Joe, who we'll talk about later possibly, came along, and I just about stayed there. So, and I'm glad I did, because again, yeah, the rest was history. We had a good few years, you know. I was fortunate to be able to captain them to 2 promotions. One on the last day of the season. After being 2-0 down, we drew 2-2. Kicked the ball out to the play for the last 10 minutes, trying to make sure that we got a point, that we won. And I think Walsall helped us on the day, because they beat someone that were in contention with us. So that was a little bit of a history. And then led them out at Wembley, and we won against Stoke in the playoff final 2-1.
Well, I've definitely learned something new there. We've spoke loads of football. It's great to hear you speak about your career. Yeah. Why coaching?
Again, I was fortunate again. I believe I had to finish early. I had to finish at 32 and a half through an Achilles tendon, which played up after scoring my last goal against Wolves. I'll throw that one in for. We did get beat, by the way. But anyway, I finished, and it just so happened I was just starting to coach in the environments within the Centre of Excellence. So I just started to get a little bit of a taste for it. It just so happened that the opportunity, while I was still trying to recover, I was able to get involved with some coaching sessions through a man called Chris Turner, who was a fantastic manager for me and sadly passed away a few years ago. Lil Fitzgerald, who was the assistant manager. So they said, look, get involved, have a little look, see what you think. And it just so happened that I was able to go in and assist. When the opportunity came to retire, they said, look, I was just starting to do my A licence. I'd done my B. I was just starting to do my A licence, which was the old school at Lillishall at the time. I was fortunate to go away and get that. And it just so happened that I was able to go in and assist. A man called John Still, who everyone knows, who was fantastic with me. He came in as manager. He was the I eventually went to Barnet with him.
Right, okay.
But yeah, he was the Barnet manager. He got Luton up. He had about 4 or 5 coaches.
He's really revered at Luton.
Oh, he's a fantastic.
So he got them back in the league.
Yeah, he got them up. I think he's the only one to take 4 teams. He took Maidstone up, Barnet,
right,
Luton, and Dagenham.
So Allardyce keeps you in the Premier League and still gets you in the league.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was just one of those situations. John eventually decided to leave. I managed the club for around 6 months. In that time, just learning all the skills, or thinking I was learning all the skills. It was decided that Barry Fry had come in as a manager. He subsequently came in. Lil came back as a first team coach. I went down as a first team coach as well, but within 3 months I was made redundant through financial implications. So we'd already moved back, Sandra and I had already moved back to Birmingham with the family, and it just so happened that I was able to play a little bit of non-league, for Ailes Owen. Okay. But then I had the opportunity to, and I got a little bit of an invite from Mark Fogarty, who's a very good friend of mine, to go and do some soccer schools and soccer camps. So I was doing them. I was working in the school as a caretaker. I was doing football, like a bit similar to what you're doing now, Wayne, you know, going into schools, doing little bits like that. So I did that for maybe 3 or 4 months, then I had the opportunity to go back in at Barnet with John, which gave me then the platform to build on from there.
Did you move to Walsall from Barnet?
And then, the opportunity came. Eric had left, as we know, Eric McManus, who was, I'm not too sure he knew a player because he picked you up, didn't he? So, no, he was fantastic. I know. But no, I took over from Eric. And again, I was fortunate because I'm trying to think of the gentleman that got the opportunity to go in beforehand, who left. He went and became a first-team coach at Carlisle. So, yeah, I had the opportunity and it was fantastic. Because of the fact that I'd had a little feel for her at Peterborough, a little bit of it for Barnet. I think we brought Marlon King through at the time, who was obviously everyone knew about Marlon. And I just had a little bit of a sense that's where I wanted to go. And the opportunity came. It gave me an opportunity to move back, and the rest is history. Really.
From what you did with Peterborough, obviously, when you went to Barnet, did you realise quite quickly, because there's been times I've read and I've known that people have wanted you to take like senior coaching, but you seem to have a real passion for youth and youth development. Did you realise quite quickly in your coaching that you wanted to develop youth, or was that just naturally how it happened?
Yeah, I think it was always, I think it was the draw from John. John was always one that was always looking, especially on the non-league scene, bringing raw talent in and developing them. And I think the fact that working with John, as I did, and the detail he went into, it was all focused on a lot of young players. I mean, Gary Breen was a young player that he brought through. When we were at Peterborough, and a lad called Dave Morrison. So he looked at young talent that he was trying to nurture. And he did that through his career. So I think that had a massive effect on me. But then when I came to Walsall, I think he was a massive influence on me in the way of Ray Graydon and his discipline, and as you know, but his detail that he still wanted to put into yourself as a young pro, but even seasoned pros. And he came from a background of youth development. And I think that had a massive influence on me. And the rest is history with the impact of Paul Taylor, as you know, as a general manager.
Yeah. But look, you said, I always try and think when we do the podcast, like sort of words that resonate. You've said a couple of things there, sort of opportunity. So I think what you can see there is sometimes, Adi Vivash spoke about this, who you know well.
Yeah.
He said, look, some of the big moments that have happened in my either career or coaching career is grasping opportunities, being ready and being resilient. And when that opportunity comes, taking it with both hands. So he spoke similarly. He went into Coventry, and obviously you worked with him at Cov. He said at the time I was just going in to help out. I think one of the coaches had been ill. And he had 6 years, I'm going to say, hugely successful. In the same sense you've said there, when you come in at Walsall, my memories of that with you was, and I think people will see this with the podcast, I think coaches coach in different styles, but your passion just bounced off the page when you come in. So for a lot of us young lads, I mean, Eka was brilliant for us. Very different type of coach to you. I'll never forget sort of your man management skills, that when I couldn't get in the first team, it was a nice thing, but I never forget it. So to not forget it 20 odd years later, like you would coach us outside of our group with the ones you could see needed a little bit of geeing up. And that was back in the day when it was reserve league, 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. So your season pros were annoyed, they didn't want to play. And those young lads wanted to prove ourselves. But normally the armband went to the most senior pro. And I remember to you, to be fair, you made me captain of the reserves, which was just, I think, a bit of psychology to say, look, you're not getting in the first team for a while. Jan didn't fancy me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you something to get your teeth into. And I think your passion and man management early on really shone through for me. And anyone I've spoke to, that still comes now. But I think what you've said there is young players and football, it's a hard, like when we talk about playground to Premiership, it's not all roses, is it?
No.
Top end of football. So when you get those opportunities, you've got to take them.
I think... I can't recall giving you the band.
No, I did. I did for a couple of weeks.
And I know now when you've spoken about it, there would be a reason in it. For me, the psychological aspect for any young player, even now, and building relationships. And again, you know, I always speak very highly of Walsall at that time because of the education I got from Paul Taylor, who was fantastic. Walsall at that time, Tom, were way ahead of everyone else. To have a general manager and select your manager as Paul used to, and Mr. Bonser. But Ray Graydon, you know, and Chris Nicol before him. But they were coaches. They wanted to improve their players, and that I think that had a massive impact on me.
Do you know what's good though, to hear someone as experienced you are in coaching? I remember hearing a saying once, and they said some of the best coaches are the best thieves. Now, what I said to people is, look, when I speak to people, you sometimes take a little bit. So, you know, Chris, I think, was ahead of his time. But if you look at the modern day of marginal gains, literally Ray didn't leave any stone unturned, did he?
No.
So when I talk about people about pre-set up your pitch, plan, do this, do that. I mean, sometimes it was a bit laborious. Huge respect for Ray. Different coaching styles, you'd want it to flow, and some of the stuff you'd think. But the reason I think Ray got Walsall up, I always say this to people, was the marginal gains and the ethos and the standards he put across the whole club was like something I'd never seen. And like you've just said, if you take a little bit from Liverpool, and then you've got John Still, and then you see Chris Nicol, and then Ray Graydon. Is that something you speak to coaches about now?
I try to. And, you know, with young coaches, you're always, you know, especially in my role now and the learning curve I've gone through recently, you know, for as old as I am now, you know, I'm still learning. You know, and especially in this role and the year course that I'm on, if I can just refer to it a little bit, it's been so good for me because, again, they talk about sharing stories, and I go, well, I don't really want to share that. I don't want to be looking as if I'm showing off. And I go, you're not, you're sharing it. Now, it's if one bit of that little bit of advice or snippet I give to a coach, they take from it and use for themselves. So you're right, you know, it's the golden nuggets that those coaches or those people that I worked with embedded into me. Now, it's how I react to that or how I impact that in my way of coaching. And I do believe I have done that, you know, but you have still got to be yourself. And that's what I've tried to be. You know, I try to be genuine. I try to be honest as much as I can be with young players. And, you know, those conversations sometimes, you know, about the critical friend. And
you brought that out, I'm going to get to that. I like that. We were speaking before we come on about that little saying.
Yeah, and I think that can be deemed or used at any level. Even with a little baby out there, you know, a young player, boy or girl, you know, you can still be a little bit of a critical friend to them. And it's at where you set it, you set it, when you're giving them feedback, when you're giving them instruction, you know, how friendly is it? How does it impact them? Does it help them? Because it should never hinder them in any shape or form. And I've always believed in positivity, you know, and I still believe in it to this day. You know, I love to see boys and girls smiling, enjoying it, you know, but enjoying it for different reasons. When they're successful, when they're working hard, you know, showing resilience, all the stuff that you need to have, the ingredients you need to have to be half decent. Forget about being top quality, half decent, and then just love the game.
That shows in the way you sort of talk about it. One thing you mentioned, so I've got it here. Just a few names, obviously, and I think Viv said this, and Viv said, I'm most proud of the kids who've gone on and had a non-league career or been a coach. If I've left them with a bit of passion in the game and they enjoyed their journey with me. But obviously, that you've crossed paths and been involved in the coaching of Matty Fryatt, Jamie Patterson, Scott Dan, Troy Deeney, Julian Bennett, Rico Henry. These are the names I remember. But a word you just used, which is quite interesting in football or life, talent, you said. What do you see as talent, and how do you nurture it?
Well, I funny enough, I used a couple of weeks ago with a few coaches suggesting hard work is talent. being able to work hard is talent.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the talented players are always deemed to be the ones that work the hardest.
What's the saying that the guys built a brand slogan, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard?
Absolutely. You know, so, and I've always said, you know, it is something that you have to have. You cannot become a top player if you don't work hard. Now, there's different ways of working hard. There's working hard physically. There's ways of working hard mentally. There's ways of working hard looking after your body, making sure that you do everything you can to be the best you can. You know, so it's not just about the physical aspect. It's about, you know, making sure, especially the way the game's evolved and young players now, you know, the analysis that goes into them, especially within academy football, you know, looking at your analysis and being able to, or looking at it, trying to look at it properly and critically of yourself, that's still working hard.
Yeah.
You know, so the hard work is, it's more than just the physical aspect.
So in terms of like 100% agree, it's like a non-negotiable, isn't it? It's an absolute non-negotiable if you want to strive to get to the top of the mountain, as we'd put it with football. And obviously you're a head of coaching at a Category A academy locally. Do you look at boys, because I've obviously always looked at things of like, you got technical, you got game intelligence, you got personality, and then we say we got specifics. It was something, I don't know if it's still used at Albion, but when I was involved with Albion years ago, it was the tips method that they use, and other people look at like spit and do it the other way. They look at strength and speed. How do you look at that, Mick? Because I think you said, which was nice when we met for a coffee a few weeks ago, like say someone's got really good technique. Cookie's out there coaching somewhere.
Absolutely.
Cookie's got great technique and intelligence, and even though you might work on the other areas, do you still feel you can enhance the areas they're good at?
Yeah, I mean, technique, you know, to be a top player nowadays, you've got to be technically efficient. If you want to just deem it efficient, you have got to be absolute top drawer. So that repetition, you know, you're talking about, Ray, a little bit, you know, repetition. As long as the repetition's the right repetition, you know. So the technical ability, it goes without saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you add to it. You know, so you just mentioned a few names there. I always remember seeing Matty Fryatt when I first came into Walsall, and he was about 10, and we took him over, funny enough, to play against Foggy's team, and he had his back towards goal, and he flicked the ball over his head and someone else's head and cracked it in the top corner. You know, when I said to Bill Jones, who used to work with him, I said, who's he? And he went, Matty Fryatt, he'll be a player, won't he? And he already had, but he was fantastic. And you could just see something in him at that age that you went, whoa, that's different. You know, I'd never seen a young boy, you know, in that capacity or that age, because I hadn't really worked at the younger ones at that time. So you saw that raw talent in him and the ability to move, and even though he was a strong boy at that age, but he had a good way of moving. But technically he was efficient off either foot, predominantly his right, but he had a lovely touch, you know, he had a lovely movement about him, and he scored goals.
Yeah.
You know, you know, and he was terrific at that young age. So he was one that was always going to be nurtured. You know, so yeah. You talked about Rico Henry. I signed Rico, but I didn't work with Rico.
Oh, okay.
So he came in just as I was ready to going to leave, but I signed him. I always remember he came in again through Fogarty and a lady called Mrs. Flash. Or Miss Flash. But anyway, and he came in and I went, wow, who's he? And he was only a dot.
I mean, I first seen him
phenomenal.
when I went back there as commercial manager. I think Dean had just budded him in, Dean Smith, in the first team.
Dean
he had a good season left back called Andy Taylor, who'd been there.
Yeah.
But as soon as he come in, obviously there's, because he's a modern day fullback, isn't he? He's one of them now you'd look at and go, he's a winger, become a fullback.
Yeah.
But pace, movement, like you could see straight away if you can sort of, like you said, that raw talent, if you can polish this.
Yes.
And Dean was obviously a very good coach.
Absolutely.
If you can polish this, there's a day and a half a player. And as soon as he went to Brentford, took him. So,
but you could see it, Tom. You know what I mean? I saw him. He moved. He was tenacious. Yeah. He had a wonderful left foot. you know. And again, we talk about he had a personality right from the off. He just had something about him.
So before I forget then, because we're going to, you know, I took your July birthday and you just said he's a small one, and I put a post out.
Yeah.
We obviously spoke about survivors. Me and you had a really good conversation about it, about June, July, August birthdays. Yeah. And when Gomez made his England debut the other day, I thought to myself, he's going to be a survivor. He might not have been, but I looked at it. He was August the 31st. He was as far on the line as he could be. Yeah. It's probably one of the biggest interaction posts we've had. About 80,000 people interacted with the post. You just made a real key point in terms of if you're a small player or maybe a late developer, you've got to have a big personality and resilience. Just touch on that a bit.
Yeah, I think they've also got to be able to show within games, within training, but more so the games, that they're effective. You know, so they might get beat sometimes, you know, but it's all depends on what position. So obviously for Rico, he was resilient and robust to be able to cope with anyone that played against him. That's why he developed, you know. So if you're talking about him, you know, you wouldn't really see, you might see a young one as a centre-half, but, you know, they'd have the physicality. You'd like to think they'd have the physicality. If they're a midfield player and you see certain movements and skills, you know, you're going, yeah, he's going to be okay. Now it's
so when you look at a young lad, obviously they're all going to develop at different rates, but you try and project forward to say, right, are these key materials I can see that they will develop through?
Yeah, and again, you look at the components of it. Are they honest? Are they hard working? Have they got one, like I call it a golden nugget. What is it? You know,
right?
What is it? And you know, have they got the ability to beat someone? Have they got a dribble? Have they got a pass? You know, so it doesn't really matter, but they've got to have something to keep themselves in the building.
Yeah,
and I think that's the skill of any coach. Now he's got something. And sometimes you can't put your finger on it, but you just see it in his play, how effective he is in games. You know, all of a sudden he do something that's brilliant, and you go, "Wow, look at that!" You know, and that keeps them in the building. And then it's the skill of like us as coaches, or like the coaches now that are in place, to nurture that and better, and then give them the time to develop and hopefully get through to the 15s, 16s and get the scholarship. And then it's still a part of the progress again, because some players still don't develop until they're, you know, 17, 18, you know, so that's the thing. And someone like a Gomez must have stood out when he was a young player and obviously impacted the games.
I think when I read up a little bit on it, I didn't realise, but his dad played for Portugal all the way through at youth.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's related to Nani, but he was biobanding, which is something that wouldn't happen. We do it in sessions here at ACE now, so we do incorporate biobanding. So if we'll have a lad who comes in as a year 3 and he's absolutely raw to football, we'll say to the parents, look, we just want him to enjoy it. He may go and play with the year 2s. Obviously, when you're playing registered football in the normal leagues, you can't play down. You can play 1 year up. But at academy level, you can't you?
Yeah,
so I've read that, like Fabian Delph, we could have looked at, I think Scholes did it a little bit. Would there be elements where, with a survivor, if he's in academy football, it may be that he plays down sometimes?
Yeah, I think it did. I did it once or twice when I was at Walsall. I think it was even evident then, as you know.
So before biobanding as that, you were doing it anyway?
You just do it because of the fact that you're just giving them the opportunity to gain a little bit more success.
Yeah.
I don't know about other clubs, but, you know, the feeling that I get now, I don't think parents are that open to it.
And do you know what's interesting? I think the parents, in the times I was around academy with both my boys, put too much on trying to play a year up.
Yes.
As if it's a badge of honour, which is great. But I remember saying to a lad who was hugely technical, great player. For me, he was like a Joe Cole at Villa. I'll say his name, his dad won't mind, Alfie Taylor. That's how he played. And he went a year up to play left back and he was just surviving. And I said to his dad, he needs to stay in the habits of scoring 10 goals a year, assisting. Why does it? He doesn't need to play up at left back, or it's at least a mix.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not my decision. I said, but in my opinion, then I was like, I see him as a 10. Yeah. And he ended up leaving Villa and going back, and he got a scholar at Cheltenham, and he was a survivor birthday playing a year up. Yeah. But as a point of academy, there was always, I felt, like, the kids, I get it, but the parents as well, they're playing a year up, which sometimes is great.
Yes.
But it's not the be-all and end-all. And the same if your lad's a little bit younger, a little bit slighter, to play down is not an absolute discredit either.
No, but it is, and, you know, the game's changing so much, as we know, you know, and it is deemed like, oh, it's success, you know, to step up. You don't need the success at these young ages. You just need them to be in the environment and enjoy the environments and show what success is in your own age group.
Right, before I forget then, we're looking around, we can turn a bit, and there's loads of kids. What is, we're working today, 4 to 11-year-olds. What's success for these kids at the minute?
Well, developing their technical skills.
Is there any technical?
Which I'm looking at, and again, both I'm looking at the work.
So there's Riley with the individual.
And so Riley's doing his individual stuff. I think success for me is them coming back next week because they've enjoyed it.
See, that's what I was trying to get to. So what we spoke about with the race to the bottom, and if you could use what you spoke about because you do, you'll speak at Premier League stuff and coaches forums. There was a thing on social media that spoke about like I think it was a 4-year-old at Liverpool or a 5-year-old. And I remember Cookie saying to me, the key word now is development and progress. And he said to me in the first podcast with him, why can't kids just play, enjoy it, and come back?
Yes.
So why I was asking you there is I think nowadays with the young ones, and I'm not criticising parents. Parents are a massive part of this journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've tried to sort of say that and frame it a little bit recently. What is success for you? Because if you're trying to deem your child's success on getting in an academy at 7, it's not how I'm deeming it. If they are enjoying it, showing a good attitude, application, and they're showing some forms of progress, and they want to come back, you're winning.
Yes.
And at the young, formative ages.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, for what I'm seeing tonight, it's absolutely fantastic. You look at the environment, they're enjoying it, you know, they're mixing in with everyone. I'm just looking through the ratio of coaches to players, like they're all getting interaction.
If you're a bit too busy in the little houses, we're going to work.
No, but it's fantastic, you know, and that's what it's about, you know. And if you think about it, this is taken over from them being able to play in the street because we can't anymore, can we? You know, so it's the same theme, isn't it? It's the same process.
You know, it's just so enjoyment. That bit as well. And so I tried to speak to a parent who was lovely the other day. So when they get to our young ages and have a little bit of debate on that, because their child was training 6 times a week at 5. And I said, look, for me, if you look at the 4-pillar model of the FA, if you look technical, I think physical, psychological and social, I said, at the moment, that's got to socially impact your family because you've got 3 kids, that your 5-year-old boy is training 6 times on a night elsewhere. I think what was interesting as a counter thing now is the unstructured play that maybe you would have definitely had, and even I would have had. Is probably not around as much in this modern day. But so we do like to create that sort of unstructured play as much as we can. Someone, league coach at Villa, when Riley was there once, I remember going there, I was doing my badges, and that was the time where I felt like everything had to look perfect at a coach. And he come to me and went, this is a chaos session. I'm not coaching for you. The kids will learn more working out. So I think it's really good what you've said there is enjoying it, wanting to come back and maybe getting some of that unstructured play in their football that they don't get. In terms of the academy journey now, it starts very young, Mick. So you said about 14, 15 for you. I think for me, you could go in the centre of excellence is when I was a kid, about 10 or 11. There is kids at 5 now. Does that worry you?
Well, if I can refer to something, when you mentioned to me earlier, I recalled when we were away on the course that I had to do for EOC. and we were up in the lakes, and it was all about leadership skills, communication and that. And they asked the question, this was about 8 years ago now, what will the game look like in the next 5 years? And for whatever reason, they said, go outside, have half an hour and then come and present. So as we were walking out, I just noticed a lady with her husband having a coffee, but they had a young baby in the pram. And I don't know what it was. I just went over, well, I didn't get into trouble, but I could though. I just, excuse me, you haven't got a spare nappy, have you? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, we're doing something. And I explained where we were and what we were doing on here. And she said, why? I said, well, I've just got this thought in my mind about where the game's going to go or where it could go in the future. And I just want to use it as a toy, really, just to suggest, well, think about that. What am I suggesting with that? And I went in, done the presentation with a couple of other colleagues, and I just threw the nappy on the table and said, go on in, that's where it's going. And they went, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, clubs, I think eventually, or we think eventually, will start taking children into academies from the womb. So this is a young baby in there. And they go, oh, well, you know, so, you know, it's interesting all those years on, or 8 years on. And I don't know. I really don't know, you know, because, yes, we want to nurture them and all that, but I can't really give you a clear answer on what I really believe in, because just let them enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's just the pressure that
I think for a 5-year-old, like, so on that post that I put, I questioned it, because I'm within it like you.
Yeah.
Partnered to professional clubs. Proud of that, in the fact we've had nearly 50 kids signed to professional clubs. But I always say to the parents, so if little Billy, mum and dad comes to me, is an exceptional under-8, I always say to them on the 4-pillar model, and I do think they will benefit for that. So when kids go into pre-academy and academy, I say that's like getting private schooling or tuition for free. Yeah. But take that for what it is. Yes. When they go to sign, I always say to parents, for what you think, for what they will benefit, I believe, in technical and physical, there's going to be psychological and social things you must consider. Yeah. So you need to weigh up as a family. Now, there's some, I agree, and I said the way the game has changed. Is that just because the way the game's changed? The European final for England, every player who started for England was in an academy at 8. Yeah. So you look at that, and so Paul Merson was on another podcast recently and said if you don't get in an academy by 8, you won't make a player. I don't believe that. No. It's not a criticism of Paul. No. He's got a valid opinion. But what I was trying to say is, I know from when my son was at a running club, your ligaments don't fully form till you're 8, 9. Not say fully form. Yeah. At 4, like, you're in nursery. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably sleeping with a teddy. So what I think is some of the parents now, I don't agree with a 5-year-old who has his own Instagram page and it's a project football, because I know from other kids that when you get released, there's elements of it. So I agree that if academies let the kids enjoy and play, but a lot more comes with it, isn't that? So I think it's interesting debate. Yeah. And I always say to people, I don't say there's a right or wrong. I put it out, ahead of you coming today, and ask people to say, look, Ace audience, what age do you think? It was really interesting that the majority said secondary school. Mm. Now, I've always said as a question mark, if kids went in when they started under 7s, if they went in under 7s to under 10s, and they trained at academies, played monthly games, but didn't go full in until they hit secondary, would we be further behind? Are we more technically developed now? Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. So I mean, you look at our players, you know, across the board. Yeah. You know, not just in the England setup or international setup, not in the Premier League, but you look further down the leagues. You know, Championship, League 1, League 2, technically.
You know, there's some outstanding players out there playing at all different, and even going into the non-league, you know, because it's drip fed all the way down. So
I was down here the other week, and Gary Charles played for Notts Forest.
Yeah.
This lad at left back, wonderful technique, and I thought this is 2 leagues below the league.
Absolutely,
this boy can play.
Yeah, you know, so technically, we're miles in front, you know, over the whole spectrum, because the top players that played when I played, or even before that and since, they were technically, you know, outstanding, you know, the top players. So that was why they were outstanding. But yeah, the technical ability. But I agree with, you know, getting them in at those early age. And again, I can only say my son, I only allowed him to go into an academy or like the Centre of Excellence when he was 12. So he'd just gone into senior school. So it's a
So was he good enough before then? Did you hold back?
Yeah, he had something. He was good enough to go into the Centre of Excellence. He wasn't good enough to sign as an apprentice because I didn't take him. So again, you know, that's a different story, but it's something that...
Are we going to touch on that?
If you want to touch on it, but it just...
No, carry on about
yeah, but again, you know, it was just something that I felt as a parent. You know, I wanted him to stay with us. He played for St Edward's, where they were a really good team. They won everything, and Mr. Ward, he was the teacher, was absolutely fantastic with them. And I remember watching them in games, and they won cup finals for the school. So they had a real nucleus of about 5 or 6 of them. The other friend of his, Charlton Davis, did eventually, you might remember Charlton. Charlton did eventually.
Coach Riley?
Yeah,
good player at Birmingham.
Yeah, so Charlton did come in. Joe said I should have been in front of him, but that's the best mates anyway. But yeah, I said no, come in a little bit later. He played for Marston Green with his mates. So again, it gave him that environment, you know, to enjoy. And, you know, a great friend of mine ran the team, and he was fantastic with them, Tony Godwood. So, and I just felt, well, yeah, go on then. Let's have a go. Let's have a go. And I mean, let's have a go for you. Let's see what you can and can't do. And he stayed in it. He stayed in, and he was a good Centre of Excellence player. But he wasn't good enough, in my opinion, to go as a scholar or an apprentice.
So look, got your dad hat on and your coach hat. So what I wanted advice is, obviously we have lots of coaches who coach their own children.
Yeah.
Obviously, how did you find that? Obviously, you didn't give Joey a scholar at Walsall, but that was just you as a coach, I feel.
Yeah, it was.
Where you felt he was.
I think I protected him. I think I protected him from the opinion of others. Well, he only got it because of his dad. But I also knew that, you know, he would have given like 100% to it. You know, this term, like 110, I don't believe in 110% because you can't give it, can you? But,
no.
You know, so he would have given 100%, but he would have missed out on a young boy life. As you know, as a young man, he did all the things that I think he should have been able to do. He went with his mates, he went out, he went abroad. He would have put everything into it. And I think he would have missed out on the enjoyment that he got from going with his mates and going on holidays and living the life that I think a young man should do. So he eventually went and played at a decent level in non-league. But even when I speak to him now, you know, he goes, no, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough. And he said, deep down, I think I knew. And I think that's something that comes back to me when he speaks to me. And he says, you know, how many players within like the academies now, Dad, if they were really honest, would say, yeah, I want to be here. You know, I know I've got off tangent a little bit there, but how many of them really love it? You know, or are they just doing it because...
I think when we spoke to AD, he said, be really mindful whose journey is it?
Yes.
And like, I think that's really key, because I've seen boys, and that's why the dropout rate's so quick, isn't it? Because of the resilience.
Yeah.
So proving that you really want it.
Yeah.
There's lads where my son is now with Tamworth. It's not an academy scholarship, but it's a scholarship at a conference club.
Yeah.
But they're having to get the bus to be there 9 till 4 find their own time, pass for a gym, waiting to play in the under-18s at 8 o'clock tonight. But if you want to be a footballer, what do you want?
Absolutely.
What do you want to give up to be able to achieve it?
Yeah, and that's what he did, to be fair. You know, he found his way again and came through the non-league scene, and he had a great time.
I watched him play on Walsall's pitch many years later as commercial, and I think he was captain in Coastal. Am I right?
It could have been. It could have been.
Wherever he was captain in someone.
Could have been Stratford or Coastal.
He was a good player.
Yeah. I mean, he had attributes. He was strong. He could play off both feet, because again, it was something that I helped him with or encouraged, and he worked at it. But he just didn't have that element to his game. You know, so it was pace. It was pace more than anything. Agility.
So normal time, like here, what's your advice in terms of for parents? So as parents are really key as part of the journey.
Oh yeah.
I always say you got player, parent, coach or club. They must be part of it. Yeah. But one of my other mentors said to me, if you get the parents on side, that's the easy part. Yeah. Like the hard part, the kids are easy. Yeah. But what's your advice to the many parents who are here now, sort of helping their kid on the journey, whether it be grassroots or academy? Yeah.
Let them enjoy it, encourage them, always give them give them feedback that's meaningful. So you've got to give them meaningful feedback in the way of, you didn't apply yourself tonight. Why? You've got to work hard. And you've got to react. You've got to be able to understand that whoever's coaching you is giving you or trying to help you. Yeah. So try and be a bit more receptive when he's asking you to do something or suggesting, little things. So they're the big thing. I'll share something that came back to me, and again, I always remember saying it to a young player. I mean, we were speaking about George Bowman. Yeah. And again, Bowers, who's fantastic, and he came through, and again, I picked him up from non-league, or like Sunday league at 15. But I always remember the one time, and you mentioned Jamie Patterson earlier, the one time we were playing in a game, and I heard his dad shouting, shoot. So he's shot. I'm looking at it from the sideline, and it's the last couple of minutes of the game. So in the end I said, George, make sure you get your dad. Tell your dad, I just want to have a chat. So we had a little chat, and I said, why did you tell him? He said, oh, well, I could see where I was standing, I could shoot. I said, yeah, but you've got to allow him to make his own decision. I always remember talking to George about it. I said, what I was waiting to see was, did he see the slide pass for Patterson, funny enough? And that would have been better for me rather than you. Oh, yeah. So it was just a little bit of it's a memory that always stayed in me, about just leave them alone. Yeah. And then when you need to talk to them, make sure it's in the right environment, and they're in the right mindset for it as well. Because they might have had a bad day, they might have had a bad game, and it's knowing, and you shared something with me from your early days with your dad. Your dad left you alone because he asked you a question and you knew that you hadn't played that well. So they know, young players know if they've done well, if they've worked hard, if they haven't worked hard, if they've had a good game or a poor game.
But the key thing you said there is, like you say, make it meaningful. Yeah. And the timing of it, and what are the outside factors sometimes. So we see that sometimes, like Friday nights. It's a great atmosphere and environment, Denny, but you've got to remember that some of these young kids have had a full week at school. Yeah. Could have got in trouble on the way here. The way they arrive, there's outside factors sometimes to it. Yeah. But I think what's key, I mean, look, I'm still learning, and you said this, and it's great with the years of experience you've had with the coaching that you say, look, I'm still learning. Yeah. But I'm still learning as a parent. And I've fourth boy, fifth on the way.
I know. Five-a-side team.
I know, God. I won't even get in it now. but obviously learning that and being able to do it, because there was a lad, and I'm sure it was with the best intentions. You talk about opportunity. Yeah. I got released from Wolves by Rob. What's Rob's surname again? I don't want to.
Rob Kelly.
Rob Kelly. Yeah. I'm sure he's a fantastic coach. I'll let him off. But when I went into Walsall, I was actually like, there wasn't even a space. Eric McManus must have seen something in me, said, lose a bit of weight, we'll give you a YTS. The lad who was the first ever pick, Stu Davies, who they'd got from Villa, who was close to England trials at 14, 15, he was the main centre mid. But when I first ever played, his relationship with his dad on the side had got to the point where it was like, I'm not going to say it was toxic. I'm sure it was with the best intentions, but they'd be arguing. They would literally be arguing, and to the point, like 9 months later, because you've said there's so many other factors. I think Stu would have been a better player than me at 14. I'm open to say that. But by the end of the first year scholar, he wasn't in the team. His will had gone, and he'd stopped playing. So I think with the parents, one of the good things I think, and we talk about this with parents, let's just touch on it, because you said critical friend. That's one of the ones I'm going to take away and make it meaningful. You can't heap praise if it's not due.
No.
So I always say to people, look, I won't criticise, but the non-negotiables are you apply yourself, you work hard. I say to my boys, or I say to academy players, you don't work hard, I will tell you.
Yeah.
It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
But obviously you've got to fail forward and make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But I think with the parent side of it, trust your coaches, let the kids play, and when you have got something to say, like you say, make it meaningful.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, a well done in any aspect needs to be earned. Well done. You know, and it can be used quite easily for, oh, well done.
So it's been in the press at the minute. You spoke about Jamie Carragher.
Yeah.
And then you spoke, I speak about Peter Crouch because I've seen him speak about it, and Kyle Walker. They said that their parent-player journey was really, not Carragher as much, sorry, but Kyle Walker did. It was really harsh with their parent. Do you see that that's a dangerous game? Yeah,
it is. And, you know, if I relate to all the players that have come through previously with me, you know, they've come through in different ways as well, you know. So Scott Dan, you mentioned Scott Dan just came through. He lived with Kearnsey and all that. But, you know, you talk about sliding door moments. You know, you've talked about this, and I meant to come back to this, and I will try and relate it in some way. You know, Troy Deeney, sliding door moment, they only happened because of opportunities that arose, you know, through contacts that I had. But they were given opportunities because we had the opportunity to do it at Walsall, as you know. We couldn't collect players from the top shelf. But, you know, when you talk about yourself and Keatsy and Michael and Clive, you know, as, you know, what careers they had, you know. But Scott Dan was just a sliding door moment where someone phoned me up. He hadn't played anywhere. He was playing in the Dock League at 15 with his dad.
Scott Dan, sorry.
And I played, funny enough, with my dad. Well, my dad wasn't a docker, my dad was a Trazzle, but I played in the Dock League as well at 15. I got invited to play a couple of games, but Scott came up. One game, I'd brought a boy in from Leicester, a boy in from Coventry, two centre-halves. Played him, and I had a man called John Kerr, God bless him.
I remember,
John was a lovely man who helped me at that time. Bill, who was still helping me, and a man called Mickey Gooden, who was a fantastic player, Mickey Gooden. But anyway, within like 10 minutes, Uzi, and he just had all the attributes. He had no pace, but it was a sliding door moment where they went, wow, great communicator, terrific with his both feet, reading the game. He was so far ahead in his mind, you know, his decision making. So it was a sliding door moment, and he wouldn't have got the opportunity, because when you talk about it, he wouldn't have got the opportunity. It was at the end of the season when Richard Money was coming in as the manager, and Paul Taylor went, he reminds me of Steve Bruce, because he worked with Steve Bruce as a young player at Gillingham, Paul. Right. So he said, and I said, keep him for 3 months. He went out to Cougar Bowl Club. We got him across to Denmark. They sent him back with Platty, young Sean Platt.
So Lenny was here previously.
So, you know, and he came back, and I said, give him 3 months. And Richard, being away in Australia, working with Newcastle in Australia, came back, brought a centre-half back with him. He got injured the first game of the season against Rochdale. Scotty came on and scored, and we drew 1-1. They got promoted that year. Again, Walsall, because we'd gone down. So it was a spur of the moment thought, but unless it was a contribution from me, just give him 3 months and he'd develop. He went out to Redditch, and everyone said, who's he? You know, so it was just that opportunity. Troy Deeney was the same. So they come through in different ways. And I know I've gone off tangents a little bit. No, it's good, Wayne, you know, but it's just opportunities as well. you know, and no sliding door moments that arise for one reason or another for opportunity.
You mentioned Clive, and obviously Clive Platt, people at Walsall, and played 600 plus games. But I remember someone was injured as a YTS at Walsall, and Salty, who was the scholar, said, "Look, my mate's already playing first team for Wensfield.
Yeah.
He's not at college this week. Can he come in and train?" And I think Ecker liked him, but Chris Nichol walked past the pitch, seen something in him.
Yeah.
And a week later, he had a scholar, and he was the first one to play pro.
Yeah.
Now, if his mate hadn't have asked for him to come in, Clive hadn't have been brave enough, took the opportunity. I mean, at that time when he first turned up, did I see a 600 game player?
No.
But he had that resilience, took the opportunity and went for it.
Yeah.
So now you've coached players, you're coaching coaches.
Yeah.
How do you find that? Miles speaks highly, so...
Yeah, listen, I again, because of the mentoring and what I've gone through, it's Nigel Redmond. If everyone remembers, Nigel Redmond was an international rugby player. He got voted Player of the Year 1 year in the international scene, and he's fantastic. 6'2",
Wow.
no, 6'4". Built, he wouldn't get through the door, you know. But what a fantastic mentor he's been for me within the coaching aspect. And he said something very early on. I was giving him something on the way of like the feedback I'd given to a coach. He went, "Oh, have you ever heard of the whys, the 5 whys?" I went, "I've heard of the 3 whys." And he went, "No, the 5 whys. Just keep asking him, why have you done that? Why have you done that? Why did you do that?" And eventually you'll get to the end, and you'll have an outcome. And again, that was massive for me, again, in my development as like a coach developer. And that's what I try and do now. You know, I don't tell them what to do. I just ask them most of the time, why did you do it? You know, we look at the coaching methods that they use, you know, so you know yourself, you know, what do you use with young players now? You know, the coaching Q&A, guided discovery, you know, trial and error. Wow. How many of the boys are just trial and error there and just practicing? You know, command. I mean, you might have to do a little bit of command to get them organised, but that's it. That's it, you know. So we talk about that, and then really being teachers of the game. How do you become a teacher of the game? Well, sometimes you just allow the boys just to play the game, you know, but then it's that ability to see something, you know, and then when you're passing that information on to the boy, is he taking it on board? You know, and this thing, like because we all know they've all got different traits about them, haven't they? You know, they're all different learning styles. And again, you know, you could be talking to a boy who could be bouncing a ball, and you're going, years ago, no, stop bouncing the ball. That might be his way of being able to concentrate, you know. So they're the skills that young coaches now have got, and parents, you know, they'll look at their boy, you weren't listening. Well, I was, Dad. You know, I was, Dad. You know, so it's those skills that you've got to learn, and we've got to encourage our coaches to develop and understand, because they all learn differently. And
I mean, you've just said it so many times there, but it's key. It's learning, though. You're learning on the job as you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember in the first times with the younger lads, and I went and did a curver course. I don't know if you ever heard the name, Alf Gloughston, but he was a fantastic coach. And just one little thing where he said, at the ages you coach, get down on their eye level.
Yeah. Did he come in to Walsall with Paul Taylor?
He may have done, because I think he's very well known.
Yeah.
But he said, get down on their eye level and never give kids more than 3 bits of information young, because then it's then it's getting into, like you've said, sharing stories to motivate. That's a brilliant thing. Yeah. Make your feedback meaningful, and make them earn it. Absolutely. So these are all brilliant things for people who listen to this podcast, can hopefully share and use. You know what the best bit's been? You're still really passionate about it.
Oh, Tomo, you know, it's like when I see, or I go in and work with somebody younger, and I don't do an awful lot of it, but on the odd occasion I'll go in.
Did you do your Achilles though the last time you did it?
No, I snapped my patella tendon, and I was trying to jump over a hurdle. It was a little bit of a step over, but no, it's just listen. It's fantastic, and you know, with your boys and the little fella coming along, you know, and it's fantastic to see, you know, young boys, young girls. I've got 3 young grandchildren, who were absolutely fantastic, you know, and the enjoyment that they gave me. But I just want to see them enjoying it, because I enjoyed my upbringing, you know, my football. I never got put under pressure by my dad. He was very demanding. And, you know, when he'd say to me, you know, to go back to that time, you know, you're in control of that ball. No one else knows what you're going to do with that ball except you, so don't give it away cheaply. If you want to stay on it, you know, and he didn't use the term staying on it. He said, if you want to keep the ball, keep it. But again, there's a time to dribble and there's a time to share. And I still emphasise that. And then that's how you start to assess those boys who've got that little bit more about them.
Because we're going to keep, you just said a key thing, because I always said, like, what defines the, I don't know, say the good to the great is decision making.
Yes.
Because most people, like you say, where you work, but it's, so when you just said, like, keep it or share, do you still at that level, the players are going to have to make those decisions? And that's what will define it, won't it? Yeah. When you watch the top players, that's what I find makes the key difference. Yeah. Within the key moments, they know when to carry to draw people out. Absolutely. Or they know, I think Dion Dublin saying, I always use it, pass on the ball, pass on the time. Because sometimes I say 2-3 touches just closes the space. Yeah. If you can shift it on in one, which I don't see enough nowadays. I said to Jude in midfield, sometimes having a look before, if you can just shift it on in one, you've just give your winger an absolute golden pass there. Absolutely. But the passion you've had, Mick, is brilliant. And like I'm going to say before we finish on what we finish all the time is, you said, what was it, 77? How many years you've been in football now?
Well, you're talking about that. Yeah, 46, 46, around that age.
Absolute, like, lifetime in football. We could have spoke for hours.
Thank you.
But brilliant on what you've done in football, genuinely.
No problem, thank you.
Last to finish.
Yes.
Five-a-side team, we've done it with everyone.
Right, okay.
So I'm going to do it with you because it's more on the coach. Unless you want to do both, but I think with you, the best five-a-side team of players you've coached and why?
Oh, wow. No goalkeeper. We don't have to have a goalkeeper, do we?
You're the guy.
Well, I'll bring you the goals.
You've always been the guy.
I'll bring you the goals.
Yeah, it's up to you, Mick.
No, well, I'd put Scott down at the back because of his awareness and his technical ability and being able to, you know, if we're talking about the modern trends, playing from the back. So he'd get on a ball and pass it, and he had all the ranges, but he could also run out and dribble. I'd go 3 across the midfield and then 1 up front. Friars would have to be my 1 up front because he was something exceptional, you know. He eventually played a little bit in the Premier League, but he was phenomenal, you know, for what I saw as a young player coming through, and he could score any type of goal. I put Troy in midfield, maybe in the middle of the park, because he did play there as a young boy, but he, as we all know, he was such a fantastic leader, and even when he came in to the club, you know, that drive and passion, which he was a big part of his game. I put Julian. To give a team balance, I put Julian Bennett because he was one that took a lot of information on board about, like, playing in 2 positions. You know, that multi. You know, when he took it on board, he was a centre half and played left back, and we eventually able to move him on again to a club at Nottingham Forest that let him go when he was 14, by the way. So we went back. So that's an interesting. And then it'd have to be maybe Jamie Patterson or Will Grigg. But I think I'd have to go for Patty, because again, Griggy was such a fantastic goal scorer, but I've got Matty in there. But Patterson for his creativity and his, you know, his cheekiness.
It's Will Grigg on the bench.
And
Will Grigg on the bench and Mick manager.
With a coal fire, you know, sort of by him.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Hope you've enjoyed it. Look,
loved every minute.
6 o'clock morning calls that we have, or when you said to me to meet up to prep this podcast, and you said 6 o'clock, and I said, "Oh, nights are busy." You went, "No, I meant the morning." Even the coffee shop wasn't open, was it?
No.
But it's an absolute pleasure, and everything you give to football, Mick. I think you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
But keep going. Still a few years left.
Yeah, hopefully.
And I'll keep annoying you about Ace in the future.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Top man.
Top man.